This podcast is brought to you in part by the support of the AMTV patrons. Thank you. Hello there everybody and welcome back to AMTV Radio. This is the podcast where I'm joined by a very special guest each time and we talk about, well, whatever we want to, quite frankly. And this time I am joined by a musician, a composer and a great big Doctor Who fan. I am joined by Peter Miles, or as he's better known on the interwebs, Dalekium. Thanks for coming on, Peter.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No, it's not a problem. And of course, now you are no stranger to a podcast, as for those who know, you did a brilliant appearance on the Who Knew podcast late last year, which was fantastic.
Yeah,
so do you feel like a bit more like ready to do a podcast again now this is like round 2?
In a way. That one, obviously we didn't use video, so I'm just sort of like, oh, is that what I look like?
I have that
okay.
whenever I have that whenever I make a video, and it's like my job at the minute.
Yeah.
I have to sort of like blank it out, but nice. So your main presence on YouTube is doing music, whether that's Doctor Who or other TV shows, whether that's remixes, reimagining, stuff like that. So I guess like the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was what made you want to start it. I did have a look back at your first video, like I do with each guest.
Oh,
I go right back to the beginning, and I believe it was from 2010, your first video.
Yeah, which is a while ago now. To think, how old was I then? 15, 16?
Mad.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
I bet. Yeah. Well, and I believe in the description, those first like 1 or 2 videos, it said it was actually for a course you were doing at the time.
Oh my god, yeah. I can't believe I actually put that.
I do my research, me.
Yeah, oh, you have. And I haven't on myself, so this is going to be interesting. I can't remember which one. It must be the Series 5 theme.
Yes,
one.
yeah.
So, yeah, I did music BTEC at secondary. And we, as part of it, we had to... we had to organise like a live concert as like and performing it as well.
Yeah.
But so it was part of the music itself, also being able to organise an event, which in itself was an interesting experience. And so yeah, me and the other people in the class, like we did a few songs. Mm-hmm. We had a few other people like contribute. And what I didn't know initially, but as it turned out, it was part of, it was like the end of year thing, like production type thing. They were just like, yeah, just fold it in, we'll make it part of it. So a good chunk of the school was there.
Yeah. And
to my eternal embarrassment to this day, I performed the Series 5
yes
on my keyboard in full Matt Smith getup.
Yes, you did. I can already see it, like the curled over hairstyle, the bow tie.
I don't quite have the hair for it because it's too long and stringy, but yeah, the jacket, the bow tie. I think I even had the suspenders.
Yes.
On the plus side, they let me keep the jacket. So
good. Oh, that's mad. You're a brave 15-year-old for doing that. I know if I'd have done that in my school, I would have been absolutely rinsed.
I don't know why I did it, because it is not something I would have thought I'd do, but I think it was just the sheer, because I think we might have been struggling a bit for things to perform, because that had to be a certain length to qualify. So I just said, yeah, I can do this. And they're like, yeah, okay.
Well, do you know what? Though? What I love about like those first few videos is like it's classic YouTube. Like before they allowed anything higher than like 480p quality, and which of course is not your fault. That was just the way it was back then. But it's so weird when you watch a video from like 10 years ago and you're like, why is the quality so poor? And it's like, oh yeah, they just didn't allow anything higher. But
yeah.
And I know from like I didn't watch everything. Don't worry. But I had a look at like certain videos that caught my eye. Because of course you've been doing this now for over 10 years, which must seem a bit like a bit of a mind blow to you that you've been at it for so long.
But I mean, time is a concept, so
indeed it is. Indeed it is. But as a musician and someone who, on YouTube at least, has taken pre-existing themes or, reimagined stuff like that, as I'm sure anyone who creates content for YouTube would know, I'm sure you've had your fair share of battles with the, quite frankly, broken content ID system. And like has that happened to you, or have you been quite lucky and like sort of got through it?
A few times, yeah. Sometimes it has been sheer dumb luck. I don't know how it's happened, and then other times, I do sort of have to prepare. So like I've got used to like preparing to work around it in case it happens.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, it does tend to be it's the audio that's the issue.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can almost be a bit complimentary in a way, because when I uploaded the 2020 theme, the most recent attempt at trying to figure out what Sega Nakanola did with the theme. It was just like completely disbarred as being the 2018 theme.
Okay.
Like the official one. So it was like, okay, I must be close then if it's flagging that particular one up.
Positive compliments, yeah. No,
yeah,
sick.
But I can't remember how I managed to get around it. I think I just had to let it slide, and it wasn't blocked in anywhere. That's when I really think, I need to change something up.
Yeah.
But that's usually the video rather than the music, and the video is not the important bit for me. So
yeah, no, of course. I think the one I felt for you most on was, again, it caught my eye because I'm a big fan of the McCoy era. And I noticed way back you did a McCoy like titles and music reimagined, and I clicked it and I noticed in the description it said it was a re-upload, and I felt for you, man. It said the original had like 20k views and all these likes, and because of the sister, what was that one? Was it one that came like not instantly but like later? It just got flagged up later.
I think it was flagged up later because it was quite early on. So I wasn't eligible for any kind of, the ad revenue stuff.
Yes, yeah.
So I think when, because I knew quite early on that it qualified for the views, but I didn't have the subscribers, or it was the other way around. So when I did become eligible, maybe it was because I turned 18. It might have been that actually, of all the things. But yeah, when I became eligible, I got very excited, signed myself up, sorted it all out, only to find, it flagged up straight away. So, but it's fine. It's old. I don't think about the old stuff at the moment.
Anything over like a certain threshold at the minute, you're just like, it's fine. Just let it get flagged. No, it's a battle we've all had at some point, I'm sure. As I've said to many people, like, it seems the more creative we get, the more the system goes out of its way to try and penalise us for it, which is a great shame. But I mean, that's just the way things are now on YouTube, sadly. So, yeah. But one of the biggest, debatably the biggest element of your channel, it's in your channel's name, is obviously Doctor Who. And we've already touched on it a bit of your... it'd be a bit weird if it wasn't, wouldn't it? We've already touched on it a little with your B-Tech and stuff, but your actual like journey with Doctor Who, sort of, how did you, in terms of the show or the music, how did you sort of get into it?
Well, the show, and like if you've listened to Josh's podcast, I've talked a bit about it there, but it's probably just going to repeat myself now. It's sort of always been there, because my parents liked Doctor Who, and they had several of the old VHSs to hand. So I was just raised on that with Bagpuss and Thomas the Tank Engine.
That's a good holy trinity. That
And then eventually Star Wars got into the mix, and Star Trek as well. But at some point, I'm pretty certain, when I was very young, like very, very young, I watched the TV movie, because my one enduring memory, like earliest memories, where you think, what are my earliest memories? This is one of them. It's the scene where Paul McGann's in the back of Grace's car and the catheter's poking out his chest.
Yeah, imagine for like a really young kid, that's quite...
Yeah, and it unsettles me now, and just thinking about like, not needles, but the like IV drips and that kind of thing. Just
medical appliances,
Yeah, icks me out a little.
It's debatably one of the more gruesome scenes in the TV movie when you think about it. It's like everything's fine, then all of a sudden Paul McGann's got something sticking out of his chest, and it's like, oh,
yeah,
okay. So
yeah, because he's just like, what is this? And he just starts, because he's pulling it out as well. It's not just
I mean, just the TV movie in places is, I think, I don't know if you agree, it's really like synonymous of that. It's the 90s. We've got to be sort of as edgy as possible, but still get that 12 rating. So, like, McCoy getting gunned down, for God's sake. I mean, like, that's probably on the... It's like, oh, should we have this big epic end? Nah, just pop him when he steps out the TARDIS. Like,
well, most Doctors don't actually get the big dramatic finale, do they? It's just often... Tom Baker, 7 years, 8 years in the role, however long it was, and he gets pushed off.
He just falls off.
Yeah.
Bless his heart. I mean, poor Colin Baker never got on screen. He just was on the floor.
Yeah, sacked first, and then McCoy had to wear a blonde wig and do it for him.
Bless his heart. My favourite thing is, I think it's in the Target novel of Time and the Rani, isn't it? They put down the Sixth Doctor's regeneration to tumultuous buffeting, and I think, like, you think again, like, a kid reading that, I'll have no idea what that means, but it sounds cool, so it probably is something quite epic. Like,
it's just several syllables for he knocked his head, didn't he?
It's classic.
That's what it sounds like.
It's classic Pip and Jane, though, isn't it? Like, it's the end of Trial of a Time Lord. How do we wrap up this 14-week story? There's nothing you can do to prevent the catharsis of spurious morality. Cool. Like, okay, that's what I think still to this day. I know it's one of those things, like, I've Googled it so many times, and I'm still not quite 100% certain on what it means, but no, that's God bless Pip and Jane, man. Classic. But so, I mean, your intro to Doctor Who sort of leads into something I'm starting to do on the show called My First, My Last, My Everything, in tribute to the great Barry White, as it were. So I'm not going to sing. Which is basically, I mean, you might have touched it. So in terms of your first, as in Doctor Who stories, was it the TV movie?
It might have been.
Yeah.
Because I also had Terror of the Zygons, Death of the Daleks, The Five Doctors, Resurrection of the Daleks, and I'm sure there's another one. But those are definitely the 4 we had on VHS. So it could have been any of those.
That's a good mix, to be fair. I mean, Death to the Daleks, I think, gets unfairly shat on, but
as do I.
Yeah, like, yes, it's a bit rubbish in places, but you just that's part of Doctor Who. I think in places it is just a bit rubbish, but it's not ashamed of it. So.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think the first episode is really good because it's quite creepy. Because you haven't even... Do you meet the Daleks?
I think they're the cliffhanger, I think. Are they?
Oh, yeah, they come up the ship right at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of it is, they're in the quarry as they are. And it's all the smoke. And it's when Sarah finds the oil lamp that John Pertwee was using.
Yeah.
And she sort of recoils because she's touched blood. Yeah. And then she gets chased by that figure in the fog. And that's really quite... I really like that. Yeah. So, yeah, I will not hear bad things about this with the Daleks.
Do you think it's one of them people go, oh, well, part 1's really good, and then they stop? Sort of like, I don't know, like Unearthly Child, like the Space Museum, that sort of thing. Like, part 1's good and possibly. The rest is a bit naff. I mean, it's just part 3, isn't it, with the checkerboard cliffhanger? I think that's what gets everyone.
Yeah. You see, from memory, I like that. But I haven't watched it in so long, so I'm relying on potentially faulty data.
I mean, I think it's the placement of things. Like, you might agree or disagree with me as a musician yourself. Like, I'm not a musician, but it's the fact that they're walking, you got this music tense, and then John Pertwee's like, "Stop, don't move," and then without missing a beat, it's the quick flash to the floor, and then the of the theme. And I don't know, maybe it's the placement of everything, but it just makes me laugh because it's so like. Maybe it would have been better if they didn't cut to the floor. Maybe if it was like, stop, don't move, and then I don't know.
You see, when you put it like that, now I start to see what people are talking about. So maybe I do need to rewatch it and give it a thorough reevaluation. But I do just have fond memories of it, and I do know some of it is naff, like particularly the worm thing. But I just love it when it comes out the water and that Dalek is trying to shoot it, and it just goes boop, and the Dalek blows up, and it just sort of gives up and rolls in. I love that.
It's like that Dalek in, I think it's in part 4, when it realizes the prisoners have escaped and it just decides to give up.
Yeah. When the going gets tough, just give up.
Just give up. It's the fact he doesn't even explode or anything. He literally just goes like, I have failed.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's the one, in Asylum, and Exelon gets referenced. Maybe it's that one. They find it and they turn him back on again, and he's like, nah, I'm out. I'm done.
Out. Oh, Asylum of the Daleks.
Put me to bed.
That story. So much promise, so much potential. But are you a fan, or are you a bit like?
Well, I wasn't the biggest fan at the time, but it has improved upon me since I've watched it a few times. But there are the flaws I found with it the first time are still there. But I do appreciate what it was going for, and obviously like the I have a bit more contextual information about what was going on production wise at the time, which does make me a little bit more sympathetic. But just the robbery of being promised all those Daleks, they don't even have the right ones in the intensive care unit. My poor death to the Daleks.
The poor silver boys.
You should have been there.
Yeah, where were the silver boys? Which is even more like frustrating now when Russell T Davies, of course, his new show's coming out, and he's basically recreating Resurrection of Daleks with 2 Daleks that look like they're from Death to the Daleks. So
yeah, I mean, he must know. He's not the person who would make that sort of mistake, I think.
No.
He just... Yeah, he knows it will annoy people. He doesn't care. But I think I saw... Do you follow James Johnson?
I do, yes, yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to him about it, and someone else flagged up that the Dalek models that they've used are fan-made ones. They're not specially built for the show. So it might have just been a case of, we need 3 Daleks. We've got these 3, and one of them is the correct one at least. So they just got them in. And fair play.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to see for the most part with that. I mean, I think by the time this goes out, It's a Sin, which is the new drama, might be out by now. But I mean, it's just nice to see that when they announced it, like when it was in Doctor Who magazine, like 90% of the responses I saw weren't, oh my god, they've used the wrong Dalek. They were like, how cool is this that Russell T Davies is doing Doctor Who in a different show?
It's just the audacity of it. Like, it's a story that, as far as I'm aware, has no relation to Doctor Who whatsoever. But he's decided, because he can, that he's gonna have a whole scene or more, or whatever's going on with 3 Daleks and the correct looking uniforms.
I feel that
I do hope it's like a whole episode of the show. Like it's like an on-set metaphor kind of thing as to what's going on with the other characters. But
I think the biggest tease for me was, and again, if it's out, you guys might have seen it, but in Doctor Who magazine they said, oh, if you keep your eyes peeled, you might see a certain Hawaiian shirt producer in the background. And I was like, no way are they doing a JNT. I know that was exactly my reaction. I was like, no way. Like, I don't think he's gonna have any lines or anything, but they're saying like, if you look, like, you'll see him somewhere. And I was like, the fact he's even gone to the lengths of saying, we're just gonna get a guy who looks like John Nathan Turner, stick him in a Hawaiian shirt, so the fans can go, it's John Nathan Turner. Like, no one else.
That's amazing. Because I was wondering, if they set up this much, are they going to have like their own like Peter Davison or John Nathan Turner? And I felt J&T would have made a lot more sense. So I'm so happy that they're doing that. Oh
yeah. So I mean, we're recording this for context before It's a Sin's gone out, so you might have all seen it, but I'm sure I'm keeping my eyes peeled for sure. I'm going to be doing like frame by frame, like stop, where is he?
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be cool to see how much Doctor Who they put into it. Like you say, whether it's the crux of this episode or if it's like maybe a quick scene and then that's it. But yeah, it's just cool, man. It's just cool.
Yeah.
And speaking of Daleks, our most recent televised story of this recording was Revolution of the Daleks. And don't worry, I'm not asking for like let's have an hour and let's take this thing apart. But from having watched it, what was your sort of just initial reactions to it?
Well, yeah, just being like sat down watching it, not looking at anything. I had fun. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. It held its own. I think it was logically consistent for the most part. I feel like the bar is quite low to be pointing these things out, because I know the standard has slightly slipped a little on that regard. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it, and I feel like I got what I needed from it. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I liked it. I thought it was a good episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was the same, like when you said about like just having fun with it, like not analysing it that much in depth, just I had a great time. So and yes, like I'm sure if anyone's curious, there's 1,000 reviews on YouTube. Some are like, this is the best thing ever. Some not saying that, but you know, it depends what you're after. But
isn't that always the way?
Oh, well, as you know from being on Twitter, there's an interesting group of folk on both sides, you could argue. But we won't get into that. But didn't you just think it was like almost surreal in a way after so long, just being able to sit down and watch like new Doctor Who on TV again? I don't know if I got that for sure. Like it'd been like 10 months since The Timeless Children, so.
I was excited for it, which surprised me in a way, but I think it's just because the gaps are so long now. I find any of my concerns or complaints about what happened before, I've just forgotten them. Yeah. So when I get down to sit and watch it, it's just like I don't remember what happened. Yeah. Let's just roll with it and see what I do remember. But no, I was very, very, very happy. Came away feeling quite warm and happy because it was nice. Yeah. And it was nice seeing that a lot of other people did enjoy it, at least from what I saw. Obviously, I can't see everything, but yeah.
Yeah, I think for the most part, people just as we had, I guess, just had fun. It was a nice, fun romp of an episode. On Jodie's era. Specifically, again, focusing on the music, I mean, it's been documented well enough that obviously the change from Murray Gold as series composer to Segun Akinola was, you know, almost like night and day in terms of style, in terms of structure, in terms of how the music's used. And again, like, I think you touched a bit upon it on Who Knew, but just for anyone who hasn't heard, and I'm just curious to think, as yourself being a musician, that sort of transition, the two different styles, how did you sort of take to that, going from Murray Gold, who I would argue, you know, he'd have like a lot of bombastic themes, out there themes. It was like, this is what we are, and we're going to show you through the music. Whereas I'd argue Segun's it works for me in a different way, how a lot of it's sort of pulled back, and it's there, but it's not like, I'm right here in your face.
Yeah, it was, I'm just trying to think back to 2018, because I was excited. I was very excited to hear what he was going to come up with. And I had priced in that, you know, we weren't going to get another Murray Gold because I did check what Segun had done already, because he has a SoundCloud. I thought, okay, it's very nice, it's very good. So yeah, when it came out, I was like, okay, this is sort of what I was expecting. A lot more like electronic in general tone, but we still had, you know, recognizable motifs. I think particularly we had. I think 13's one, and maybe not the TARDIS one. I think that would have been the following week. But yeah, definitely, you know, stuff you could pick out, and it just sounded nice. I was happy with it. And the theme tune, obviously, that was a bit unexpected, because you can't really predict what someone's going to do, because particularly with the Doctor Who theme tune, they're not necessarily going to do what you think they might do. So as I'm still learning now, what he did is completely like out the ballpark. It's really, really quite striking. And I definitely responded better to it than I did the Series 5 theme, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. But then I'd have the wisdom of age to be a bit more nuanced and balanced about it.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just, I love it. I really love it. I'm so happy with what he's done with the theme. With the soundtrack, now that we've had Series 12 and obviously Revolution, it's really interesting watching him experiment, because I don't really know how much he or the show might respond to like criticism they see online, if at all. But there's definitely, particularly for the bigger episodes, he leans more into like the orchestral side of things, while with your more standard filler episodes, well, not standard filler, a regular run of episodes, it's a lot more pared back, and it relies a lot more on the electronics and the synths to tell the story. I think what's really surprised me is that I didn't think for ages that Yaz or Ryan or Graham or like the fam had their own themes. But that's because I'm not very observant, so that's partly my fault. But no, they do have them, and I was actually hearing them in Revolution, which was really nice. So it's very interesting, because it's not as they are very much opposites, Murray and Sagan, because Sagan is very pared back. It's not going all over the place. It's very simple, and if it's there, it's there. While Murray, you'd have like whole operas going up and down, doing whatever works. So it's been really interesting to see how he's developed his writing and the tones he's going for. I have to confess, although I do love his electronic stuff, I did think that the orchestral stuff that he did with Revolution was just beautiful, because I think it's a more easily accessible set of tones, because everyone grows up watching TV with like organic instruments, like an orchestra. So I just thought he hit it really on the nail. Head of the nail, whatever that phrase is.
He hit the nail.
Yeah.
No, I think in a way, Zygons, as you say, there's a lot more reliance, I'd say, more than Murray, especially in the late years, on, as you said, like the electronic element, which to me is always sort of what music in Doctor Who was always about. Like, they always tried to use that more, as you said, like not necessarily organic sounding sound. And there's nothing wrong with orchestra. Like, some of Murray's tunes are great, but I just find it interesting because isn't it Series 1 where he didn't have access to a full orchestra or something like that? He only had...
Yeah, so Series 1, he didn't have the BBC Wales orchestra. I think just budget reasons, that was the main one. But also, I think it's a confidential, or it's an interview that Murray's done, where he talks about, what was his brief, like his conversation with Russell T Davies, because they'd worked together before. I think, what was it? It might have been Queer as Folk, actually, but it might have been something else that Russell T Davies had done. They'd worked together before. He wanted him in. So it being Doctor Who, Murray thought, well, I'm going to go down like the electronic kind of route, much like what we'd had before with the classic series. And he showed it to Russell and Julie Gardner, and they were like, yeah, it's okay. It's quite nice. It's quite like, we really like this bit. And it was literally this one piece that was just sort of a bit of strings or something. They're like, yeah, could we have it more like that, please? And it was because the composing in a production cycle is usually right towards the end, so I think Murray had to be like, shit, I've got to rewrite everything that I've done to make it sound more orchestral and like kind of modern. And he whipped it out, and that's all. Although it's orchestral sounding instruments, it is all synthetic.
Yeah.
So you would have done it like on a computer, on a laptop if he was traveling, maybe.
No,
and then obviously Christmas Invasion onwards, he gets the orchestra to use.
Yeah, and I think you can tell in Series 1, but that's by no means like a bad thing. I just think there's some great moments in Series 1 where, as you say, you hear that more electronic or synthetic sound, and it really carries. Like it really, really does work. But I mean, one of the most, I think, common arguments I saw, particularly when Jodie's era started, and more now as it's gone on, is people saying, oh, well, one of the reasons why it doesn't work is they're saying, oh, because the music's bad now. And part of me thinks, but are they saying that because, you know, if they've been watching, say, since the revival, you've had 12 years being spoiled by Murray Gold and his style? Do you think it's sort of a, you know, that sort of knee-jerk humans don't like change reaction in some respect? I know it's not for everyone, but
I think there is a bit of that, but also I think we have been very lucky with Murray because he does love his melodies, which is, I'm going to say, might not be correct, is unusual for a soundtrack, because even if you think about Star Wars, everyone knows the Star Wars music, lots of recognizable themes and melodies, but I can't think of one that is quite as long or melodic or like tells a story in its own right as, say, Dalekium, Thames, like Leaving, or similarly like the Oud music.
Oh God,
you know, that is quite special, and that does make me sad that we have lost that. But doesn't mean what Sagan's doing is bad.
Yeah.
Sagan is doing his job, and it's what any other composer would be doing, writing, scoring for a TV show. And what he's doing is very interesting, because I don't know what he's doing half the time. It's really interesting. I'm like listening, trying to think like what is that? Yeah. Because he does a mixture. He will use live performances, but usually it's more soloists now. Okay. So it might be say Ascension of the Cybermen. That's the Garda scenes. That's a fiddle. He has a fiddle player, and I think there's a piano in the background. The TARDIS scene was a solo French horn. Things like that, and it will usually just be for one episode primarily, and then scattered about in a few others. And then it's synths, so he's got like, you know, instruments or software, and he's doing that. But then some of it, I think, must be found sounds, much like Delia Derbyshire did right at the beginning, where he's recorded a sound and has manipulated and been able to turn it into music, which is really cool. I love that, because I don't know how to do that either. So one day I will figure that one out. But it's really cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I mean, I have a lot of respect and admiration for musicians and composers who, like you say, can just do that. Like, they can just be out and about and hear like a certain random sound, and then their mind is in such a way where they think, right, I can make like a beat or a soundtrack out. Do you know what I mean? Because I've you know, ad hoc tried to do it myself, and I just don't think my mind's I'm not wired for that. But no, so I have a great respect for that. And obviously with Murray and Sagan, they've been like sort of the only main two composers of the last 15 years of Doctor Who. So jumping back to the classic series, which I'd say probably each of those 3 decades has had its own sort of distinct sound to it, whoever was composing it. So my question for you is, in the classic series, is there a particular composer or incidental musicist, if you can call them that, or just an era of sound that speaks to you the most?
You see, I'm really bad, because although I've watched a decent amount of the classic stuff, I haven't watched that much. Like, it's very scattered. So the music side, I'm even more lacking.
Oh, that's
fair. But what I do come back to as like my pinnacle favorite track, and I suppose as a consequence, the composer is Malcolm Clarke's Cyberman theme. I can't remember if it has a particular name, but it's in I think it's Earthshock.
Yeah, I want to say it's just called like March of the Fleet or March of the Cybermen or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. And it's when they're waking up on the ship and you have they're bursting out their pods as they like to do. But then you have the scenes of them walking out into the corridor, very much as a Ascension of the Cyberman definitely aped, which is really cool. And that music, that like those drums, because it's so slow, it's not like it's like boom, and it's creepy because it's a march, but it's slow and deliberate, and that's what makes me think of Cybermen, is that they're very, although they're not slow, there's a patience to them, which is what makes them menacing to me. So I think that's brilliant. It's such a creepy tone, and it's such a great scene as well.
Yeah, I'm hearing it now in my mind's eye, and you're right, like it underscores that scene so well. And I think they used it again in Attack of the Cybermen, but it doesn't work nearly as well as it does in as you say, it's the perfect sort of like waking up, coming to cause some havoc, basically. But the one that always makes me think of Cybermen, funnily enough, is the stock theme they used in the 60s. You know, what's it called? It's like what's it called? Like Lost Planet 2 or something, like a random stock title. But because I watched Tomb of the Cybermen very young, and again, you say like those drums are dum 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 dum, and they're waking up, and I was like, wow, that's such a cool Cyberman theme. And then years later, I learned it was just a stock track that they had lying around. Which is mad. Like,
no, that's sort of that I think that's probably second on my list. I should have thought of that, really. The drums with because they've got that like the tape delay going on. I think it's a timpani and a snare, and it's on the snare, but I've tried incorporating that into the more original stuff I've been doing on the timpani, because it's like, to me, that's the Cyberman sound. Heavy sounds, basically, for the Cybermen. I think the era that, I'm a big 80s music fan, right? And I know that, like, some people, you can trash me in the comments, you can call me whatever, but, like, I don't know what like 80s pop specifically, I know a lot of it is trash, but it's a big guilty pleasure, and I take no shame in that. Tiffany's first album is one of the best albums of all time. Anyway, the sort of McCoy era, because I think in the 80s, like Davison's time, Colin Baker's time, it's very synthy, but in a way it's not what you'd hear in like the charts at the time. Whereas the McCoy era, I think there's so many sounds in that you hear in like late 80s pop songs, like the repetitive like drum machine beat and certain sound effects. And do you know what I mean? Whereas I think like the rest of the classic series, I'm like, this is sort of unique music, but you can tell it's of an era. Whereas the McCoy era music is like, it's good, but it very much sounds like the instrumental of a pop song. Yeah, I think I do wonder, like, the decision processes when it comes to, particularly if there's been like a change with, say, your Doctor or production, and what they're thinking of when they're what sound do we want to go for? Because the McCoy era stuff is as you said, very like recognizably 80s kind of stuff. But I was just thinking now, that's a more conventional sound, not dissimilar from what Murray was doing. A very modern or of its time conventional sound. And I'm wondering if they're thinking maybe we need to make the music a bit more accessible so that more people can sort of figure out what's going on. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I think they all have names, I'm sure, but I can't remember it. The one that always springs to mind is in Remembrance of the Daleks, and I think it's where the Doctor and Ace have been like snooping around the rebel Dalek base, and then they're like, right, we have to go, and they start running. And I mean, obviously, I can't. It's hard to describe, but it's just very much like do 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 do, and like the hand clap sound effect. And I'm like, that is straight out of like a Pet Shop Boys sort of vibe. So but you say it's interesting when, because you're right, it's very much, I guess, what Murray was doing. But
it might be a technology thing actually, because what Kev was doing was that he had a keyboard much like the ones you'd see now, where you'd have lots of like sound banks, presets of like strings or piano and that kind of thing, which is pretty much how he did the music. for that bit of Doctor Who was that you recorded different bits onto a multi-track, while before it was, dedicated synths, so it was all electronic bass, and you have all the knobs and cables and stuff. So maybe it's that, I don't know.
Yeah,
but it's
no, that's true. I think I've seen an interview with Kef at the time. I think it's on this is so obscure, like the Silver Nemesis VHS, where there's a documentary tagged on at the end that, funnily enough, hasn't been put on DVD yet, which is a bit odd. But he's in his little studio, and you're right, he's got his keyboard and he's got all his pre-recorded sounds, and so it could be. And I'm gonna say this now: I love the Kef McCullough Doctor Who theme. It's my favourite theme. Yeah, because a lot of people are like, oh, it doesn't sound. I think some people say it sounds, the least like the original, which, yeah, it probably does, which is fair enough. But I don't know. It makes me both think of, I'm gonna have a fun time in that jolly way, but also there's moments in it where I think it's really sinister. Like some of those synths he uses in it are so like jarring, but not where you go, ooh, that's a bit hard on the ears, but it's like, whoa, like that. Do you know what I mean? It sort of stands out a little bit. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I can see that.
What are your thoughts on the Kef McCullough thing?
Well, I don't hate it. I don't hate any of the things.
Sure.
I don't have time for it really. But it is. I do share the point that it is probably the most furthest removed from like the original.
Absolutely.
I think you're definitely right about the sounds. I do like the sounds. I think the main things for me is just the bass is just a bit too like, Kef, come on, like put a little bit more effort in than just sticking an arpeggiator on and holding the keys down and then stopping when you need to change it. Yeah.
You can just picture him now sat in his studio recording it, like say fingers on certain keys, just like done. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Like, it is probably the most removed from the original. Absolutely. Like, I think even with, say, the Peter Howell theme, there are still elements where you're like, that's from the original. You can tell. But I don't know. It might have been because it was one of the first classic Who eras I sort of got into. But yeah, I think as I say, it's primarily been the sound. I think I just like how it sounds, and again, my love of 80s probably plays into that. Whereas, say, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example where, as you say, like, I don't hate any of the themes, or maybe an example I don't care for as much. Well, I think that the TV movie theme, I would argue, is a bit lazy, in my opinion. Because I think because you've got, like, obviously there's like the I thought it was just in like the the prologue of the movie where it's like, oh, on Skaro the Master was put on trial, but when you listen to like the actual track on like iTunes or whatever, that music is there as well. So it's that big building music. You're like, right, we're building to something big, and you've got the the four drums, the da 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 da. So you're like, right, and then when it kicks in with the middle eight, I don't know, the rest, it sounds like they put half of the orchestration in, but there's like my ears are thinking I don't know, I just feel like there should be a bit more, and it's like, oh, you just sort of skimped out. But that's just my view anyway. What do you make of it?
I'm just going to think on that, because it is, I mean, I say Kef's one is the most far removed, but actually probably the movie one is equally, if not more so, because it's the first, it's the first fully orchestral one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wish I knew more about it, because all I really know is that although it's orchestral, that one is also, it's synthetic. The entire score was done in very much like an advanced way of what Kef was doing.
Yeah.
And is the basis of what a lot of composers do now. It's sampled instruments, and you have it on a keyboard, and you can mimic very much live like performance and quirks with that. So that actually really impressed me. But I do question some of the choices. I think because as a result of it being fully orchestral, so like where you have when the main melody kicks in for like the melody, not the middle eight.
Yeah.
you've got all the brass doing like echoes and call and response. I'm not convinced that works, and I assume it's deliberate. But the fact that they have mimicked Kef's bass line, that the slightly bounce, it's got that bounce to it.
Yeah.
I just don't think they should have done with that kind of sound. But I have a feeling it might be because they're trying to. It's very transitional. It's very much, there are things about it that quite literally from start to end start off very Kef in a way, but by the end it's its own thing, which is why I think they had the middle eight at the beginning and in a different key to the rest of the theme, because it's in the key of Kef's version, while the rest of the theme is actually in E minor, which is the original key it's in. So I mean, I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
It's my headcanon, as it were. What they're trying to signify is that there is this transition happening. Yeah. That it's.
I never realised that though. But now you say about the middle eight being the same key, but you're right. It is absolutely Kef's vert. Oh, I don't know.
I really don't like the transition from that. It's just really awkward and a little bit ugly, which you wouldn't have if they just kept it all in the same thing.
I think that's what I meant in terms of me feeling like it's a bit lazy, because it feels like, I get what you mean about transition, but in that sense it feels like it's that build to something. You get the middle eight screeching in, and then the actual melody just feels a bit less epic than they've made the rest of it out to be.
I think that's a structural problem, because it's a middle eight. We don't just say that because it works. It's because it does serve a particular function, and its function works best after you've had at least one full run of the main melody. Yeah. So to preface it with that is, you do rob yourself of the anticipation, as it were. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's just clocked. I don't actually know who composed the movie theme.
John Debney.
John Debney. I don't know why I didn't know that.
He's done a few other sci-fi things, I think.
Was he an American composer or British?
Yeah, American. I think he's American. Yeah, pretty certain he's American.
I mean, a lot of that TV movie is American.
It would make sense, wouldn't it?
No, I don't know why. It just crossed my mind. I didn't know who he was, but there you go, John Debney. There's one composer though in all of Doctor Who that I'd be very curious to get your opinion on, because I feel this composer is very maligned, and and I'm usually of the stance with anything, it's like, okay, something's maligned, let's try and give it a chance. But even myself, I'm like, I'm grasping here. But are you familiar with the work of Carrie Blyton?
No, I'm afraid not.
That's all right. So he did Doctor Who and the Silurians, like the Pertwee early Tom Baker. He did the Sea Devils. He did Death to the Daleks. He did Revenge of the Cybermen.
I know Death to the Daleks.
Yeah. And I think that the claim is his music basically feels very out of place for what's on screen. Like, I remember in Death to the Daleks, we were talking about Part 1's cliffhanger where they emerge from their ship. And again, I'm not going to attempt it because it's practically impossible. But it's very, like, almost jubilant-ish music. It's not the sort of the Daleks are here sort, like their entrance in like in Genesis, when they're shown for the first time, and you've got there's like dum 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 dum, like really foreboding drums. Whereas Carrie's stuff in Death to the Daleks, it's just sort of like do 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 do, and again you see and it's like you see these Daleks trundling on, and you're like, oh yeah, it's like, and he uses a lot of what I'd call ugly sounds, like sounds that do sort of make you go, like the Silurians always sticks out to me, because whenever they appear, and again, I apologize for your ears and anyone's ears, but it is literally but he's playing it on like the ugliest, he's picked like the ugliest synth sound in the world, and he's just jammed his finger in it, which again, like, part of me's like, I guess it kind of works for being that, like we said, that otherworldly sound, but it's a very ugly sound. Like, it's not nice. So, but yeah, I mean, don't worry if you're not too familiar with it, but I mean, in terms of, like, as we say, those ugly sounds, do you think do they hold a place? Because again, it's like you get what he's going for, but your ears are just sort of like, oh, this is really not nice.
I just don't know, to be honest, because my knowledge is mostly just more like modern stuff. You know, most TV shows they would have a dedicated composer, as we do with Doctor Who now, while back in the 60s and 70s and the 80s, they'd be swapping out composers all the time, like, and they wouldn't necessarily be composing like 3 episodes in a row. It would be they'd do this one. So I don't know what the decision making process was in that regard, but it does have to be the first job of the composer when it comes to writing their music, is that it shouldn't break the scene.
Yeah,
it's meant to complement the scene, and I guess, I mean, for all we know, it actually worked in the 70s. Maybe
it
thought,
did.
yeah,
maybe
this is great. This is cutting edge composing on Doctor Who. Wow. But now to our ears, it's just a bit painful and it doesn't work.
Oh, honestly.
And I can definitely see that with Death to the Daleks, because now that you've reminded me of what those little motifs were, because they're just everywhere.
Yeah. I think it's any time the Daleks are in like a shot where they're moving, it is that and it's like, it sounds more like a weird, like, distorted nursery rhyme than a like foreboding theme.
Yeah.
So,
that being said, the chanting that the Exelon people do, I really like that. That's very good. And I think that was
Carrie Blyton stuff. Yeah.
Blyton, yeah. I think he did write that, and that's very good. But yeah, because what is it? It's like a saxophone, a clarinet. Maybe it's 2 different types of saxophone. It's a really small ensemble.
Yeah.
And it is that.
It just doesn't work. So.
Yeah.
I think maybe for another monster it might have worked, but for the Daleks, who, I mean, breaking it down now, obviously, like, you know, they glide everywhere, whereas that motif sounds more something that, like, either yomps around or, like, drags itself. Yeah. I don't know, like, it just makes
maybe
the
it was
Daleks
intended to be more reflective of the Exelons
maybe
than the Daleks, but obviously they didn't quite, write enough music to differentiate the two.
Honestly, at some point when you get round to it, specifically Doctor Who and the Silurians is probably the one that stands out most to me, because I love season 7. It's my favourite classic season, that first run of Pertwee stories. But one of the few things that lets it down is that damn... Oh no, I've just remembered. One of the main instruments, as well as the ugly synth, as I call it, a technical term, in the Silurians, is he uses a kazoo a lot. And well, you'd be able to probably identify it, but I think someone told me it is a kazoo. It's or at least it sounds very kazoo like, one of those sort of family of instruments. And I think that's mainly when, like, the Silurians are attacking. I think it's used a lot.
Okay.
But yeah, when you get round to Doctor Who and the Silurians, just let me know what your thoughts are on the soundtrack.
I will see if the soundtrack is itself available online. Just because I need to know.
You need to know,
because I could believe that they use a kazoo. And I suppose there
yeah.
could be some inventive uses for one, but I'm worried about how it was used in this context.
Again, it's just I think it's a use of, like, wrong monster, because those poor actors in the early Silurian suits are sort of, like, really having to, like, drag themselves around in some scenes, and let's just say the way they do the sound for the kazoo just makes it look really silly and like it's really comical. But no, that's it. There you go. You can listen to Doctor and the Silurians and be like, what is this? But yeah. But I mean, even though, as we say, all these in classic, you had these different composers and New Who now. I mean, do you think it's really cool how now a lot of those early soundtracks are getting their own, like, individual releases, like on CD and vinyl and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I do. can't say I quite understand it, to be honest. Like sorry, that's really rude. Actually. I mean, yeah, it doesn't appeal to me. Okay. To maybe buy.
I did wonder if you had like a whole vinyl shelf of like all the releases.
No, I'm not. But... For a musician, I am really rubbish at listening and getting music.
Sure.
You know, every year there's the Spotify.
The Wrapped or whatever they call it.
Yeah. Mine is like you listened to 20 hours of music because I just don't use it. I don't listen to music as much as someone who alleges himself to be a composer to listen to. Yeah. And I have tried improving, but my excuse is watching all the telly that I do, that I'm listening to the music then, so I'm soaking it in from there.
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag because I got gifted one a few Christmases ago. I got the Five Doctors soundtrack, which, to be fair, it had the original 83 version. I think the 95 version as well when they did like the special edition. So that was pretty cool. You had two different versions, but again, like, you know, you have it on and it's like, especially with those classic series ones where a lot of the tracks are literally like 6 or 7 seconds long. You sort of go through it, especially on vinyl, and you're sort of like, I can't imagine a scenario besides first listening where I would put this on, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's what it is for me. Is that I can't imagine thinking to myself, "Oh, it's the weekend. I'm going to put on the Sunmakers."
But there'll be someone out there who does. There'll be someone out there,
and to that person, I can only apologise.
I mean, I do get it more with, say, like when they released the first 2 series of Murray Gold. I sort of got that a bit more because he composes actual, you know, like 3-4 minute long melodies and themes, as we talked about. But like, I look sometimes at the classic series ones and I'm like, do I want a vinyl soundtrack of The Invasion where, like, as good as some of the sounds in that are, like the main theme of The Invasion I think is really good, but outside of that it's like, I can't. When would I stick that on? Like,
I think because a lot of the music, at least from what I'm aware of back then, it was never, you know, it was purely about setting the tone rather than, you know, using motifs to like construct your own little story within the music.
Yeah.
So each episode does have a very unique like tonal identifier to it because they were written just for that episode. So you don't have a Doctor's theme, as it were, or a companion theme.
No.
So I think that's partly why it doesn't appeal to me, because you know, if you've got a melody, that's something very easy you can listen to. While if I put on the Sunmakers, for example, I think I'm just going to be thinking, well, that's the Sunmakers. They may have repeated a track, so it's like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, God forbid if they ever release Doctor Who and the Silurians, because that will, you know.
Well, that's going straight into my basket because you've given it such a glowing review.
No. I mean, I love season 7, but not that much. But as you say, each theme or composition has its purpose or reason for existing, and I wanted to take some time to talk about 3 of your videos on your channel. Don't worry, these are more recent. God. I'm not digging back to 2010. My own work. I like that as well. You know, when people say, "So why did you make this video?" I'm like, I want to talk about it. Like, so I've tried to pick 3 sort of, I guess, different ones, not just say like 3 theme remixes, if you like. And I'm just curious about sort of, I guess, the initial idea you had of like, oh, I want to do this, and then your process for doing it. And we'll start with the fun one, Dr. Disco. Because I mean, I love that. Again, big Kylie fan. But so did you just hear like that, her new single, and thought, ooh, that can blend? Like, what was the idea behind doing Dr. Disco?
Pretty much that.
I like it.
Not immediately, but yeah, the single came out and I was like, oh, I really like this. This has surprised me. And then it was something I was listening to on Spotify. 19 of my 20 hours was just that song.
One song.
Yeah. And then I must have seen, that was it. you know Pip Madley,
Yes. Yeah.
on Twitter. When the album cover art released, he made a very quick edit of Kylie superimposed onto the Colin Baker
Yeah.
titles, with the colourful
Yeah.
outward bit. And I think he even referred to it as Dr. Disco. So I thought, I wonder if there's something I can do here. And lo and behold, there it was.
Oh, and again, all of these tracks, guys, if you haven't, go to Peter's channel and check them out, because Dr. Disco it blends everything I love. It's Doctor Who, it's 80s inspired music, it's Kylie Minogue, it all just works. Because also for anyone who hasn't listened to it, Disco is a very good album by Kylie Minogue, probably her best in 20 years, so you should go and listen to it. Have you listened to the full thing?
Yes, I have. I really do like it.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Do you know who's that? Sorry, sidestep everyone. The other album that surprised me this year was Steps' new one. Because
really?
I'm a big, being a child of the late 90s, early 2000s, Steps was pretty much, whether I wanted it to or not, ingrained in my childhood. So when they said, I know they've done a few reunion albums, when this one came out, I was like, oh, I'll give it a listen, I'm sure it'll just be very, 2010s sounding stuff. But I think what they've done is they've sort of now accepted that the peak of their appeal now is the songs from the 90s, early 2000s. And they've lent into that whilst also doing new techniques. And as a result, it's a very good album. So I'd recommend that album if you're into Steps at all. But
you see, I did mean to listen to it, and I think it just completely slipped my mind. Because I really like the second most recent one, Scared of the Dark? No, that was a single. Tears on the Dance... No More Tears on the Dance Floor.
No.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That came out, I think it must be about 2-3 years ago now.
I
love that one. I love that one. And yeah, I don't know how I've managed to forget to do that. Because I do like them. So
yeah, I think if you listen to what I think two of the singles at What the Future Holds and Something in Your Eyes, they're literally you listen to it, and I think by the chorus you're like, oh yeah, this is Steps. But no, but that was a nice little sidetrack. We could do a whole chat about that. But second video, your recent Time War theme, which blew up on the socials, because you've been working on that for quite a while, right?
Yeah, well, in a roundabout sort of way, yeah. But it wasn't. So the process was that months and months ago, I think probably June last year, David, who did the video, asked me if I'd be able to adapt one of my, at the time, recent tracks called Fantasia, which was me trying to experiment a bit more, because I've got a load of new stuff. Actually, the challenge was try and create a theme tune that's not like a theme tune.
Yeah.
Using only free instruments that I had on hand. And it's a lot slower, and it builds up, and you get hints of the melody, but it never quite develops. And I went with Fantasia as the name because in classical terms, Fantasia was what they would call doing much as I do, really, is variations on a pre-existing theme. So it's fantasy on a theme. So David asked me, could I adapt it to fit into a title sequence of some sort? And I said, yeah, sure. And then I don't think I heard from him about that in particular for a good few months. Was that it? I can't remember. But at some point he did send along like a drawing board type thing.
Oh, like a storyboard thing.
That's it. Yeah. Very rough storyboard of how it's going to pan out. So I did the bulk of the adaptation there, and then there was another long period where I didn't really hear from him about it, just because he was busy. He does a lot. He does a lot of work for Big Finish, which is really cool. And then, it was. When did I put that one out? Was it last month?
Yeah, I think it was December. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
I reopened it again because I learned a few more things. I understood what I was doing in a way. I wanted to tweak it and fix it up a bit. And coincidentally, David said, "Oh, it's actually nearly done. It's ready. It's ready to go out." And it's like, well, I've just tweaked it, put it in. Hopefully, like it should all line up. And I'm so glad I did that, because that very last edit was probably only a few days before it went up. Was definitely the best one, and I'm so happy with how people responded to it, because it really felt like I got it.
Yeah.
And it matched exactly what he was doing, and just the general vibe and tone.
Yeah.
And as a personal achievement, it's definitely the one, because my mixing and mastering isn't very good. I don't have any like formal education in that regard, so
Right.
that one was very much, I've cracked it. I'm understanding now after 10 years what I'm doing in that regard.
From the Series 5 montage to now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it did surprise me actually, just how much it picked up, because it got noticed by the BBC America.
It did.
Doctor Who blog, I think.
Yeah.
Or the BBC America. It was BBC America something. And it was the first thing before the announcement that Chris Eccleston was coming back to Big Finish. And I got name checked
potential
in it as
theme.
well. Who knows?
No, but I mean, like, I think what I liked about it was, because obviously it's billed as like Time War stuff, and if anyone's listened to the any of the Big Finish like Time War Doctor Who ranges, they obviously made their like their own theme for that, which is a lot of I'd say like it feels very like grandiose, like especially again like the middle eight is a lot of that feels like a ceremony sort of thing, which works. But I think what I liked about Time War is it was a lot more, to me it got across a sort of more like subdued, sinister side of the Time War before it like explodes out, instead of being like bombastic all the way through, so to speak. So
well, David's thinking was it was like very much approached it almost like a Netflix opening sequence. And that for something like the Time War, there's a lot to work with in terms of the sound. So, and I think that's why he picked Fantasia for me to adapt, because it is dark. It's very, it's very uncertain and slowly building towards something. So to be able to take that and then have it like break into the theme tune almost as we know it, but very, you've got the drums in the background, which is, an easy go-to signifier of big bad war badness.
Yeah.
Without going completely overkill on it, was really good. And then I did throw in a little bit of what Sega Akinola was doing into the melody, just to add a little bit of sparkle to it.
Yeah.
What I didn't think about actually at the time, but someone else commented, and it was a really good idea, and I sort of had to think, yes, that is absolutely why I did that. So when the melody sort of it breaks off and it's sort of like it splits off and just sort of goes.
Yeah.
Someone said it was like, it was something along the lines of, it's sort of like almost like the Doctor breaking who he was because of his impending incarnation of John Hurt. I was like, oh, that's really good. I'm glad you picked up on that.
So yes, that was my intention all along.
Yeah. Truthfully, I just thought it sounded cool and it worked.
Which, I mean, of all the talk we've had of composers and their intentions, maybe that's what they thought all those years ago. Maybe Carrie Blyton slammed that ugly synth and thought, yeah, this sounds really cool. So,
I mean, truthfully, particularly with a lot of my more recent stuff, it is very much, oh, this sounds good, I'm going to roll with it.
Yeah. Well, why not? Surely that's a good way to progress in a way, because I imagine there must be times like where you're on a certain part of a song or a track and maybe you spend ages trying to find what instrument fits best or what works best, and then when you find it and it's really cool, which it gives you sort of like the impetus to keep going with it.
Sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes I might just be playing around and I'll hit on something and think, this sounds good, but I don't know what for. And then something will come along a bit later, or an idea pops into my head and I think, I'm going to make this with that. And that was definitely how the Fall of the Master soundtrack.
Which, funnily enough, was the third and final one I was going to ask you about. Your pros. Oh, it's on. Look at that. See, it's nice when things glide into each other.
Yeah.
Like that. So, Fall of the Master, for anyone who doesn't know, was a piece that was first seen, I believe, in Ace Creeper's live stream last year for Young Minds, which was fantastic. I didn't get to watch all 12 hours, but I caught bits and pieces. And of course, Fall of the Master had music composed by yourself. So how did that whole thing come about then?
Again, that was a slow burn one, because George asked me if I wanted to work on it a few months beforehand. But he's very busy. Obviously, he's got the channel. He's at uni. So it was just sort of me waiting for him to get back to me and say if he was still doing it. Which he was, and he said that he's doing it for Young Minds. So I thought, okay, that's perfect. I was a bit worried though at first, because I had just started working full time.
Oh right.
So I was thinking, oh God, I don't know when I'm going to find the time to do this. And then by luck, because I'd been playing around at some point and thought, I think that could work for this. And just went with there, and it came about really quickly, and I got it to him in time. And I'm very, very happy with how it came out.
No, it sounds great. I mean, it fits it fits the characters so well, whether you're listening to it with the dialogue or if you just because it's on your channel, right? Just the soundtrack element. When you listen to it on its own, you just think of those characters, and it fits so well. But do you often get requests then from various creatives like, oh, do you fancy doing this, do you fancy doing that, or
not so much recently, just because for a while I have been saying I'm not available for commissions, because I was at one point, and it was really fun. I did really enjoy doing it, but it was burning me out a little bit, and I just wanted to take a step back and try and recalibrate and figure out what I wanted to be doing. Yeah. Generally. And then I was starting to make tentative plans to think about reopening on that side. But then I got a job, so it kind of trashed that a little. But
'tis the way of the world. So you have a good plan, and then something else comes along. So,
but I do occasionally get asked, and there's been one or two recent things that that I like. I really like the sound of the idea behind it, of what's being done. So, timing permitting, I'll be happy to say yes to them once I'm certain that I'll be able to give them, because I don't want to rush things.
No, of course,
because I want to be able to deliver the best thing possible. But yeah, no, it's very nice that people are like, I really like what you're doing. Can you do this for me?
Yeah.
But it does make me sad that I have to say I'm really sorry. It's probably a no. But not because of anything you've done. It's just because I just don't have the time anymore.
I don't like the look of you. No, I will not compose music for you. No, that's fair. No, well,
it is a shame, because I do particularly like more original stuff. I really want to, get a little portfolio going and see if that goes somewhere.
No, absolutely, yeah. Well, I think you've already demonstrated it. Sorry, you go.
Because lockdown kind of nixed my plans initially, back whenever it was 84 years ago.
Yeah, long time.
So I thought, well, I'm going to focus on the music, and then that's where the Patreon came from, and then the commissions from that. But now I am where I am now, so yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you have a job. I love one of those. So. But no, it's a funny old time. But I think we will get into... We have some questions for you from the good old Twitter sphere. Got a couple. So the first one is from Vorp. I think that's how you say the TARDIS sound, right? Vorp.
Yeah.
Who is also just, his at is Callum Craig Moore 2. For anyone watching this on YouTube, if it looks like I'm squinting, it's because I am. I'm terrible eyesight. So Vorp, we'll call him, has asked you, favourite villain other than the Daleks?
Other than the Daleks, don't listen.
Cover your ears.
Well, on Josh's podcast, I talked a lot about the Zygons because I really loved Terror of the Zygons when I was growing up. That's still one of my favourite monsters, but I feel like I don't want to repeat myself there as much as I love them.
We'll alter the question to other than the Daleks and the Zygons.
Yeah. Ooh. I should have thought a little bit more about this because it's probably the Cyberman. If that's not too obvious an answer to give, because who doesn't love the Cyberman?
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's people, but yeah, no, I do, and I really like what was done with them in series 12.
The Cyberlords. That was a big old pull. Do you mean more sort of like in Ascension and onwards?
Probably more Ascension, but Cyberlords, when I first watched that, I was just like, oh my god, I can't believe he's done that. I had to breathe just to make sure that I comprehended what was happening. But I have thought about it a little, and I do think there's something there. I think it's just such a shame that it was shoved in at the last minute, so we couldn't get a bit more into what was going on, because it literally just is the Master's already destroyed Gallifrey. He's faffing about with Ashad, and at the last minute he's turned dead Time Lord bodies into Cybermen, which, saying it out loud, doesn't sound very exciting. It sounds a bit naff. But then I started thinking about, well, what could you do with them? What does it mean now that these creatures exist? Because I guess in a way you have to break a few eggs to make an omelette. So I am curious to see. Well, I hope we see them again.
Yeah.
I am expecting to see them again at some point, because I don't think we've seen the last of them, and there's definitely a lot going on there.
Yeah.
And it's very reflective, I feel, of how the Master feels about his own people, which is not really something we get all that much, at least in the older run. I'd like to think. Obviously, he hates them, and they don't particularly like him either. But to see him actually to cross the line to say, "I don't like you anymore. I'm setting you on fire," and then taking them and melding them with something as bad as the Cybermen into something a lot more. I'm curious. I am curious.
Yeah.
Maybe the delivery was off, is what I'm trying to say. But I think it can work, so I'm hoping it will happen.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in concept. Like, I like the concept of it almost, in the sense, like, okay, you're talking about this horrific idea that the Master has, as you say, wiped out the Time Lords, but also then turned their corpses into Cybermen. Like, there's something really horrific about that, and it plays on that whole body horror thing that the Cybermen have always had. I just feel in the Timeless Children, which for the most part I enjoyed when I watched it, but not that I wanted to see the Master like pick up corpses and throw them into a machine, but I wanted, I guess, a bit more elaboration on that idea, like sort of what drove him. Again, we may not need to see him kill the Time Lords, but what drove him to think, I can do this. I think so. Like you say, there's beginnings of a good idea, and maybe it'll get more fleshed out. Who knows? But it's one of them.
Because the Master, I'm presuming that he knew that Ashad was coming, or for all we know, he actually engineered the whole circumstance to get the Cybermen to Gallifrey, so he could do that. It's that conversation he has with Ashad, where Ashad's like, "Oh, we're just going to rid ourselves of our flesh and be robots," and the Master quite rightfully says, "Well, that's rubbish." Yeah. So I'm wondering, because he doesn't give his own, as you're saying, his own motivations for why he did. So I do want to understand why he thought that converting the Time Lords was the next step for them, or whether it's purely he just wants an army.
Yeah.
And I hope it isn't he just wants an army that can't be killed kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the Time Lords being Time Lords, you know, maybe they don't work properly. These cyber lords, they're like their consciousness keeps trying to revive or something. I don't know. I'm hopeful. I am hopeful.
Yeah. You watch it, they'll do a Rise of Skywalker where you think Ashad was the big bad, and then it's like, I made Ashad, and then John Sim pops out of nowhere, and it's like, it was me all along. Like, and the Sasha Master's like the Kylo Ren, who's like, what's going on? So...
No. The Sasha Master. Someone's going to ask, maybe 13. How did you survive? The colony ship, and he was like, somehow I came back.
Which was basically Palpatine in Rise of Skywalker. Because somehow, I think there's only one line, I think, where that guy's like, "Oh, Sith techniques, cloning," and then that's it. It's like, oh, maybe it's this, but who cares? Palpatine's back. So, but no, thank you, Callum. Thank you for your question. There's your answer. The next one we've got two from Hector, who is his is my middle name. So if you read it all in one, it's Hector is my middle name. So there you go.
I thought it was at.
It might. I missed that. Hector is my middle name. Either way. But Hector, the first thing he wants to know. Oh well, we might have touched on it. Oh, we haven't ranked him. He says top 5 fave composers that worked in Doctor Who. I don't know if you had him in like a ranking or if you just like 5 in general.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can do 5 because my classic Who composers knowledge is a bit.
Carrie Blyton, number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, just the top half of Sega Nakanola on number 5.
Yeah.
I
think we've established your love for Murray Gold, or like a lot of his work, so...
I feel weird about ranking things because... I don't think it's me just trying to, please everybody. It's just, there are lots of things that Murray does well that maybe Sagan doesn't, but then there's lots of things that I think Sagan does well that Murray doesn't. So it's not quite apples and oranges, but there is a bit of that. So I don't think it's quite fair to place one over the other.
That's fair.
All,
they've all got their merits, really, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I even name that many? So let's see. Murray Gold, Sagan. John Debney did the incidental music for the TV movie. Malcolm Clark did a bit of Peter Davison with Peter Howell.
Yeah.
You've told me about Carrie Blyton.
Yay!
Lost Planet number 2 stock music.
Lost Planet number.
I don't think I can give a definitive answer, I'm afraid, on that one.
To weigh into it, one of my favourite Who composers is Dominic Glynn. I really like Dominic's work because he did the Trial of a Time Lord version of the theme music, which I've always loved. I sort of like how... Because like, even though the Peter Howell theme is great, for me, I think for a lot of stories, especially with like cliffhangers or downbeat endings, it's a bit too jaunty for my liking. Or it's a bit too upbeat, if you like. The one that... what was I watching the other day where it had a downbeat ending? Some Colin Baker or Peter Davison that had a really like hot like ending where it's like shit, like things have gone down. I'm trying to think now. Maybe it was it Warriors of the Deep? I don't know. But a story where it was a downbeat ending, but then you've got this and it's that really upbeat sound to it, and I just never thought that worked. Whereas with Trial, I thought it captured the essence of the Derbyshire original, but again had that more sort of like mysterious edge to it because it sounded a little bit darker.
Yeah, I really do like his theme. I think it's very interesting considering the context of the show at that point, because obviously it had been put on hiatus for a year or so. The ratings were scaring people. The tone was heavily criticised for its violence and its gore.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting because it does pare it back. It's a lot subtler in a way. and it really contrasts with Colin's Doctor, who is who is big and bombastic, and then the theme is not. It taps into your more sinister, creepy tones.
Yeah. And his work.
And I wonder if it's part of like the like a project to try and adjust and rehabilitate him slightly, and say he's not this big brash shooty gun man when he shouldn't be. He is still the Doctor.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really beautiful theme. My favourite variant of it that Dominic has done, he did one in 2008.
Okay.
And I think it's because of the way he recorded that theme. The bass line is different.
Yeah.
In every version that he's done, because I think he lost a tape or something like that. Or he lost the settings that he used on his keyboard to create the bass line.
I think
so
I know the version you mean.
One,
yeah.
It's very different to the original. It's a lot. What's the word? I want to say flatter. It doesn't. It's not. It's less diddly dee. It's more like. I have no point of comparison for this one.
I think it's on the, for anyone listening, I think it's on the Trial of a Time Lord DVD or Blu-ray as like isolated score, because I think 2008 was the year that story came out, and I think I know what you mean about being. I'm hearing it in my mind's eye. Like I think, yeah, and it's a different mix. The bass is different. Because the main reason that he did it was because there never was an official full version of that theme. He did an opening and a closing, but never a full one. Any full ones you'd heard before would have been spliced from the two into each other. So he did this one as a like almost like an official release in a way. But the bass line is very different, and it's really good. It's really good, and there's some slight like percussion going on in your left and right ear. It's like the I don't even know what it is, but it adds a little bit more rhythm, and it's like yes. Now that you've done that, I know exactly the version you mean. Yeah, it is the one on the DVD. Yeah,
but otherwise, particularly with the melody and the little like decorations on top, that's the same. But I really love that version because there's something driving about it, and I think that probably captures the Trial of the Time Lord vibe even better than the one given in the 80s. And the reason was that there's only an opening and closing one is because he was short for time. He got asked last minute to do the theme tune, so he had to be like, oh, bugger, I've got
I'd never known there was not an official one, because I owned that version on a 12-inch single vinyl record at the time, and of course, now that you've said it, what it will be is the opening and then spliced immediately with the start of the credits. But I didn't, because you're right, it doesn't say like official theme. It just says like new theme of the time or whatever. So yeah, I'll have to re-listen to that.
I'm pretty certain that's correct. I might have just made all that up.
No, but it sounds right. 'Cause you're inventing lore as you go. I love it. Like. And Hector did have a second question for you, which is, why are you so fascinated with the Doctor Who theme? He then put so many different versions he's made, I'm assuming meaning you. So yeah, why are you so fascinated with the Doctor Who theme?
Truthfully, I wish I knew. I have no idea. I mean, that's only half true. I think it's because I like theme tunes in general. I got into the habit ages back of like trying to learn all the theme tunes that I could. So I could play most of the Star Treks, the opening bit of Star Wars, Wallace and Gromit.
Nice.
Red Dwarf, I think.
Okay.
And just any others because I'm really good at listening to something and being able to play it. Or figure it out quite easily and play it not long after. So it's sort of like a little challenge in a way. But with the Doctor Who theme, I think because it's been in my life so long, and being a musical person, it just sort of meshed together.
Yeah.
And I think it's always that curiosity when I was really, really young of trying to figure out how did Delia do it with the very original, because I couldn't figure it out. And even to this day, even, you know, having read all the information about it, I still don't quite understand how she and the Radiophonic Workshop were able to bring that together, because it's so striking. So I think it's probably that. Also because it's a good hobby.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's a very fine tradition to be rearranging the Doctor Who theme, because of, particularly in like mid 2000s, what really got me going was this one website called whomix.winbubbles.net, which was a site dedicated to hosting people's remixes of the Doctor Who theme. Wow. Hosted by Danny Stewart. It's still up now. I don't think it takes recent ones, but it goes as far as 2018 to like 2003.
Good God! Think. Wow.
Yeah. But also a lot of those people, I think, similar situation to me, I guess, is that they got older, they got full-time jobs, and
life,
couldn't commit the time to it as they once could. But I'm still in touch with Danny. We talk quite regularly, and he's doing well. Still loves his theme tune, and like we frequently try and figure things out together. But yeah, it's not a dying art, as it were. But I think that because it was such a focal point. You know, if you wanted to listen to or find new takes on the Doctor Who theme for your fan audio and then your fan YouTube or something like that, you probably go there and download one and use it. But then it has fallen out of use, very sadly, and the people who were regular contributors are away. So but there are people out there, and don't worry, I know you exist. I know you're there.
It's just mad, isn't it? The sort of fascination or passion us Doctor Who fans have with, well, anything, including the theme tune. So, but thank you for asking, Hector. And then we have someone who goes by the name of Sock. I say it like that because there's 2 exclamation marks. So Sock, who has the @ of Bill Potts, or Bill P0TTS. Hello. And they want to ask, when lightning strikes the sea, why don't all the fish die?
Well, let me consult my colleague Google. Before a lightning strike, a charge builds up along the water's surface. When lightning strikes, most of electrical discharge occurs near the water's surface. Most fish swim below the surface and are unaffected. Science
with Dalekium, everybody. Well, there you go, Sock.
Sitting comfortably.
There you go, Sock. That is your... I love it when people do that. I do it on my channel, like a weekly Q&A, and I love just like the most random ass like questions in the world. It's like, I got one, my favourite one is, because it was started the blue, it's, do you own a washing machine? And at the time where I was at, I didn't, and I was like, no, I do not. So I just love those sort of random, like really weird. It's like, oh, can you have Shona McGarty on this podcast? And I'm like, what's that? Like, is it someone from EastEnders or something? But and then the last one. Sorry, go on.
When I was on Josh's podcast, Tom Vance.
Yeah. Yes, Tom, we know you're listening.
Rebel heart. One of his questions was, what apple do I like red or green? And I'm sorry to bring up old wounds, but I was just like, I don't know, and I don't really care.
Oh, well, it's funny you say that, because our last question is from Tom Vance himself. You've led you as soon as you said, "Oh, Tom Vance," I was like, Yes, Tom, we've acknowledged you. He says he's a big fan. Big fan is Tom Vance.
Oh, good.
And there you go. And he says, we all know you bloody love some Doctor Who music. Let's face it, who doesn't? But what were your favourite music releases of the year? So of your 20 hours of Spotify listening, what were your favourite releases of the year?
Oh, God, 2020. What happened in 2020? It wasn't a very eventful year, was it?
Not much, really. Bit quiet.
Well, obviously, we have talked a bit about it. Disco by Kylie.
Absolutely. Big album.
That was a big listener of mine. To be honest, my listening tastes are a bit basic. So yeah, Kylie and Disco. What came out in 2020? I listened to Chromatica a lot. If that says
Lady
anything
Gaga.
about me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not subtle about it, but you know,
No, I'm a
dropping
big fan.
hints, wink wonk.
I'd say it's wink.
Yeah, so there's that. What else came out in 2020? My memory's awful. I've got such a goldfish brain.
Did you listen by any chance to one of my favourite releases? Was it Katy Perry's album, Smile?
No.
Because, like...
No, never been quite into...
Yeah.
I liked Never Really Over.
Yeah,
or was that 2019? Does it technically qualify?
The single was, but it is on that album, so I'm like, it's one of them. But I just think it showed over, like, the last 10 years how much she's still pop, very much so, but, like, how much she's, I guess, matured with that sound. Like, because you listen to Teenage Dream, and then you listen to, like, some off this new album, and you're like, okay, like, this isn't the same Katy Perry. I guess sort of like Lady Gaga, because, like, Chromatica wasn't my favourite of her albums. I think for me it's The Fame Monster. That was, like, such a big part of my life when that came out. Because, of course, that was, like, the re-release of The Fame, but with, like, those new songs like Telephone and Bad Romance and all that stuff. So I think for me that's my... Because whilst we're on it, let's go Gaga. What's your favourite Gaga albums?
Favourite? Oh, okay. Because I do like The Fame Monster.
You're going to say... If you say Joanne... So...
I mean, I like it more than other people seem to. Just putting that out there. But it's not my favourite album.
So what was it? You had The Fame Monster, and then it was Born This Way next.
And then it must be Art Pop.
Yes, yeah, and then Joanne, and then Chromatica's the sixth,
isn't
it?
Cheek to Cheek is somewhere in between those two. Which, to be fair, I really like because I love like jazz big band, like that crooning trad pop style.
Yeah.
So I really do like that. And it makes me sad people don't appreciate it because for me it's Gaga being able to demonstrate her vocal ability properly on a record for the first time. Yeah. Which, with what came before, she's obviously very good, but she is going down a particular route with how she's performing. So for me, that's very much that's organic Gaga, if that makes sense.
Like the Daleks in Revolution, you hear other stuff, you're like, you are impure. So...
yeah, Art Pop is not my favourite, but some of the singles I really like.
Yeah. Jewels and Drugs I really liked off that album. Which is like, who were there were rappers on it as well. God. I just like it.
That one is so long.
Yeah. But yeah, I think part of me with The Fame Monster is it is like nostalgia goggles, like for where I was at in my life and how important it was. But yeah, I just felt Chromatica, whilst it was good, it felt more like, I don't know, it felt not like a regression, but it felt more like just a standard pop thing for Gaga. It didn't really feel...
Yeah, it wasn't as experimental or adventurous as she has been. Yeah. With her other stuff, and it is slightly dated in a way, but the fact that it's so consistent throughout, because I think it's a very consistently good album, and that's a strength for it. So I assume it must be quite deliberate in a way. Yeah. But I don't know why. Yeah.
There you go, Vance. You've got us talking about Gaga now. So.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think of the singles from it so I can remind myself of how it sounds. Because I do like the little orchestral interludes, the classical 1, 2, and 3. And obviously 2 has all the the memes that came from it.
Oh yes. I liked her collab with Elton John on that album.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
That was probably the most different one because of how it ends.
Yeah.
And when that happened, I was like, well, why isn't the rest of the song like this? That's the niche.
Yeah.
Of what Gaga's doing is, taking different styles and genres and like being weird with it. And then that's where it finishes, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Particularly, imagine Elton John doing singing over. Is it drum and bass? Is that what it is, or is it like?
Yeah, I think so.
EDM maybe. Well, I don't know. I don't know my genres very well.
Saying that, I mean, one of my surprises of the last few years was when I realised David Bowie back in the 90s did a collaboration with like the Pet Shop Boys, and obviously it's very like heavy 90s like bass, and like you hear that collab and you think, oh, that shouldn't work, but it actually really does. So I could believe Elton John doing like a EDM-y drum and bassy sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean about some parts of Chromatica being dated though. Like I always thought the lead singles they went with, like Stupid Love and Rain on Me, literally sounded like they could have been on the Born This Way album, like production wise. They sounded very early 2010s instead of 2020.
To me, they sounded very, although early 2010s, still very early 2010s Gaga, while the rest of the album was fairly conventional 2014 general pop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why I was a little bit disappointed with like the overall sound, because I guess that's why Stupid Love and Rain on Me were the singles, because they're probably the most out there with the sound.
Yeah. I think we need to have a whole separate like interview thing just generally talking about pop music, because I think we'll go on forever. See, Tom, this is what you ask questions like you know exactly what you were doing. We're both big Gaga fans. You knew this was going to happen, you little devil.
I've just had to Google what came out in 2020 because I do not remember at all. Wow, that was a lot of stuff that I just didn't listen to. I really like Midnight Sky, Miley's.
Oh, yeah.
Was that the single as well as the album title?
I know it was the single, but I don't know if it was... I don't know if it was the album. But yeah, it was definitely the single.
I really like that. And then when she started just doing all those covers, and then suddenly everyone was like, we love this, do more of this. So she did.
Gave in to the pressure.
I mean, to be fair, I think it's probably her strongest sound to date.
Okay.
Something about it, because she's got such a gravelly, raspy voice. When she's tried to do more R&B style pop, I just don't think it's quite worked for her.
No.
So this more rocky, slightly 80s synthy thing going on.
Yeah, I didn't like that one
What
was that one she did with... Was it Will I Am a few years ago? That just... Was it Feeling Myself?
I don't think
I'm feeling myself. Oh, it was basically her trying to do like R&B or rap, and it just didn't really
it just doesn't suit her voice, I don't think.
No.
Like, keep doing country, keep doing the rock thing. I love that. I adore that. I think that's probably her strength.
Hannah Montana. See, I never watched it, but I always remember the first time I went to the O2 Arena, it wasn't to see a concert, it was to do one of their experiences that they had going on. But that night they had a Hannah Montana, as in Miley Cyrus was being Hannah Montana concert, and I just remember when we left, it was like 2 hours before, and all these people coming in wearing like Hannah Montana shirts and wearing Hannah Montana merch, and I was like, and we passed the staff member, we were like, oh, is it busy? The O2 Arena, like 100,000 whatever. They were like, it's sold out, and I was oh my god. So, but I mean,
Hannah Montana, extremely popular.
She was. Jeez, if it's not Miley Cyrus. Yes, Miley Cyrus was very popular. But,
what do you mean she's Miley Cyrus?
What? Anyone under the age of 10 is going to be like, what are they talking about?
There's so much stuff that I'm really bad at just saying, I'll listen to that or I'll watch that, and then I just don't.
Yeah.
I need to force myself to sit down and that was the only way I managed to get myself to listen to Chromatica, was to be like, you are listening to this because you like this one thing and everyone's talking about it, so do it.
You will do it now. yeah, absolutely. Well, Tom, thank you for inciting a brand new discussion video that we will do at some point. But
Before we move on,
sure.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
On the Gaga.
Back to it. All roads lead to Gaga.
It's worryingly how much they do. But I did tweet about this, but I don't think that many people noticed. You know the War Master theme.
Yes.
That I did. You know. There's the like that screaming howl. That's with the melody.
Oh please, go on.
That's a sample of Government Hooker.
Oh man!
When she's singing the huh in Hooker, it's that because it's the same key, so it harmonised, and I thought I have to use that because it's such a like primal sound.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, there you go. In Peter's version of the War Master theme, there's a little bit of Gaga in there. If you listen out for it, I've just thought the War Master and Lady Gaga would be great friends. I think they'd get on like a house on fire.
I think they would actually.
Yeah, I can just see Derek Jacobi just interacting with her, and she's like, "Yeah, cool, whatever." But that's a new audio drama for Big Finish to write, right, guys? I can see you doing it now. Also, Netflix, Big Finish. If you need a musician. This guy right here, he's available. He's very capable. Yeah. Oh, excellent. I just remember when you said BBC America shared your Time War thing. I know that is very cool, but I know if that was me in my head, I would have been like, shit, they're coming to Content ID me, shit. They're going to take me down.
It did occur to me, but nothing happened, so we're fine.
I think the coolness factor would take over, but just like, I think because I'm so used to it with YouTube now, like pretty much anything I do that involves other clips, my mind's just like, you're going to get Content ID'd. But I realised that I started something early and never finished the whole My First, Last and Everything because, I'm a very professional person who keeps track. I've got notes right in front of me but Gaga talk is more important, to be fair. So,
well, if you want to switch to that, please
no, it's all right. So, I mean, we touched upon your first, where it could have been the TV movie, but it could have been a selection of things. In terms of last, so that's the most recent thing you've watched. So that could well be Revolution of the Daleks, as it was the last thing. Or have you watched any Who in between then and now?
I've not.
Thing? So it is Revolution. There you go.
Yeah.
Amazing.
What am I meant to be doing with this one?
Right. I never explain it well. It's basically just like what's the most recent Who you've watched, but then I realised recent could mean as in like in terms of when the story was made, or as in like that you watched.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, it would be Revolution. Yeah.
And we've already given our thoughts on that. And My Everything is like the one story where it's like, say you have all of Doctor Who at your disposal, but then someone's like, you got to pick one of these because all the rest are going to get washed away. So it's like, out of all of Doctor Who, what's the one story that you'd hang on to?
I think it probably... it probably is Terror of the Zygons.
Yeah. I remember on Josh's podcast of how you were saying how much it meant to you, basically. So
yeah, and I do think, if anything was to survive and someone was like, how do we bring this back? You've only told me the stories about this wonderful TV show called Doctors Who. I would hope Terror of the Zygons would be the reference point.
Yeah.
Because I think you probably got all the basics and the good stuff and the premium quality stuff in there. So
yeah.
If I was to pick a different one, just for the sake of variety.
Sure. It's going to be Death to the Daleks, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's not going to be Death to the Daleks. It doesn't sit in that echelon of this question, I don't think, sadly.
It is a very big question. I get that, because obviously you've got to think of all near 60 years of Who, and then pick one
that I've definitely watched all of.
That doesn't matter. It took me a good. How long has it been now? It took me 10 years where I could get to a point where I could say I've watched everything that is at that time out. But that took me a lot of pocket money. So hence why it took 10 years. But
yeah. I don't know. I've had two thoughts, but I can't quite think why, or whether they're quite appropriate to as the everything thing.
Yeah.
And they are Into the Dalek.
Nice.
Because to me it's absolutely a love letter to Resurrection. It's clearly inspired, to me at least, from like visually at least. You know, where they like blow up the airlock door, cutting through the door, the battles that they have, even the vocal performance. It's the only time I've heard the Daleks done like that by Nick Briggs on the show, because they sound almost hysterical in a way.
Yeah,
and like they're a bit higher than compared to what like the Gold Daleks usually have for their voice. And I do think it's a good episode. It's a really interesting one for the Doctor, because we're getting to grips with, you know, how different Capaldi is at this stage.
And isn't he gorgeous?
Clara, he is, yeah. And Clara, you know, proves she's more than his match by slapping him. Am I remembering that correctly?
Is it that? Oh, yes. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
It's when they make the Dalek bad again, isn't it? And he's like, oh, well, I told you this was going to happen. And she's just like, whammo. Like,
yeah. I mean, she probably didn't need to hit him. It probably wasn't necessary.
That's a weird recurring thing in the Moffat era of people getting slapped. And it's kind of weird when you think back on it.
It does get weird. But the, like what she says.
Yeah.
You know, she's just like, no, that is not what we learned today. I thought was I do enjoy a good companion giving the Doctor a telling off and making him change his mind.
Yeah.
When that happens, the other episode, is absolutely like a comfort episode. Is the Unicorn and the Wasp, just because it's so silly, so ridiculous. It's just a shame about the author of that one, sadly. Which is why I try not to mention it when these.
I was literally about to ask who it was, but I've just remembered, so we won't go into that. Yeah, if anyone's curious, just find out for yourself. So
yeah, but you're like Catherine Tate is at her comedic best in that one.
Yeah.
Even David Tennant is as well. Like the two of them bounce off each other so well, and the towards the end where they're doing the traditional Agatha Christie, who was the murderer bit, and Donna's just in the corner like, he did it. So he did it. I've got on my phone at least 8 screenshots of every iteration of that, nice. So I can use them when appropriate, because they're so good.
But those are 3 pretty varied stories. Like Terror of the Zygons, Into the Dalek, and Unicorn and the Wasp. It's a little bit of every. I guess if you're allowed to keep 3, it's a little slice of key different aspects of Who, I suppose. But I'm with you on Into the Dalek though. Like Series 8 for me as a whole is my favourite New Who season personally, and Into the Dalek is just such a gorgeous like 45 minutes of what it is going into a Dalek. And when you said it, you think it's inspired by Resurrection. I never thought about that, but I do get what you mean, like about visuals, and it just makes me chuckle at that one.
Even the sound as well, because that's probably the most obviously electronic sounding episode, I think, in that series, possibly that Murray did. Like they're right at the forefront. And when I first watched the episode and heard the soundtrack, I was really hoping, yes, this is a really new direction for the show, and it just never quite left that point, which is a shame, but. No, can't have everything, can we?
I mean, like, it just makes me chuckle. There's that one scene in Resurrection of the Daleks that you could argue doesn't need to be there, and it's right near the end. It's the scene where they're on the space station, there's 2 people walking, and that Dalek comes around the corner and just goes, stop, exterminate, and then kills them, and it cuts away, and it's like, what does this add? These are 2 extras. Like, as far I think they are anyway. I think we've one of them's like they're extras who've popped up, but I don't think they say anything. And it's just like you literally included this scene just so a Dalek could kill them. Like it's just it makes me laugh.
At that point, Eric Sword was on his rampage because he did Revelation, next one, I think.
He did.
And that is also a Dalek bloodbath. So you just like kill.
It was
everyone.
like everyone must die.
Yeah.
We do love it though. Oh, that's ace. And I mean, the last question I had for you, which is what I've been asking people, is there a story in Doctor Who where, because you know what the fandom can be like, there'll be stories where the general consensus is these are bad, like that's the overwhelming, or like these aren't as good. Is there any story like that where the fandom's like that, but you're like, I actually kind of like it? Because I'm like that with, say, the Twin Dilemma. You know, the one where everyone's like, this is the worst story ever. And I'm like, I think
Is that the Verve Void one?
No, it's Colin Baker's first one.
Oh, okay.
Which is like always bottom of the polls and everyone hates on it. But I actually think it's kind of good. So a story like that, basically, where like the majority's like, it's not that good.
Well, less so recently, I've found, but Into the Dalek used to be that one.
It did, yeah.
A lot. Like a lot of people were just like, "Oh, it was crap," and I'd be like, "Well,
just wait right there, sunshine."
Yeah, but more recently, I feel like maybe it's just the people I talk to, but it does seem like it's getting a better hearing these days.
Yeah.
So failing that,
again, I know it's a very broad question, but I'm just. Yeah, I'm just curious.
Are we talking like almost universally panned or divisive? So like 50-50 love hate.
We'll say we'll start from anywhere from 50-50. Yeah. Narrows it down, I guess. But
yeah, I think probably. I was about to say It Takes You Away because I knew the initial consensus on that was, well, there wasn't one. It was very divisive, but I think again it's aged a bit because a lot of people didn't like the frog at the end.
The frog.
It Grace Frog.
Grace Frog.
because it broke their like suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
And I could see that, but when that happened, I was just like, oh my god, I can't believe they've done that. That's amazing. Because it's such like a Douglas Adams type thing.
Oh, absolutely.
To have this incredible, a living universe that's been banished by the other universes or the people in the other universes because it's dangerous. But all it really wants is a hug. So it turns into a frog and sits on a chair and imparts wisdom. It's great.
That's all you need.
I love
That's
it.
all you need.
And it just works so well in that episode. And in a similar vein, I sort of feel like there's something about It Takes You Away and Can You Hear Me that feel related in a way, even though they're about very different things. It might be because, the bad guys are the god people.
Yeah.
But I know it came far too late, but I love Yaz's story there. And I like that it got to grips a little bit more with the companions' like personal fears and their motivations, but also just to have them separated for a little bit to see them in their own little worlds. But in opposite to It Takes You Away, the ending does really ring quite hollow for me. It still annoys me.
Okay.
When Graham talks to the doctor saying, I'm worried that my cancer might return. And the doctor's just like, I'm just going to stand here.
Yeah, I know that
I'm
was...
I'm going to pretend. And it's just... Because I don't think... I know they've... she says that, she's a bit socially awkward. And she definitely is. And I don't want to say that isn't the case. But I don't think it's consistent with how she has responded within her own run as Jodie's run as the Doctor to similar moments, because she's heartfelt and empathetic with King Charles in The Witchfinders, and in Revolution just now at the end when Graham and Ryan are leaving, she really connects with them, and she the whole one heart happy, one heart sad.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't vibe.
No, it's not. I mean, that was the one scene. Again, I reviewed it at the time where I was like, it doesn't. No matter what way you look at it, it just sort of comes off as a bit like that face. For anyone listening on the audio, I'm clenching my teeth because it's like, it's just. I had something in my head to say, but it's gone now. But yeah, you're right. It's not cohesive with like the character we've seen both before and after. And that's it. I was very curious because who was it who wrote "Can You Hear Me"? Can you remember? Because that wasn't a Chibnall one, was it? Not like him on his own.
It wasn't, because it came before The Haunting of.
It did just before
Thingy Bobby.
Yeah,
Let me Google it.
We're consulting Google now, folks. The suspense.
Impart your wisdom. Charlene, James, and Chris Chibnall. So he probably.
See, now that makes me think it's like, as you know, Moffat did it as well. You know, where he'd add little things like it's that thing of that scene in particular. It's like, was that Charlene's script or was that Chibnall?
Yeah.
And I really hope in the future, because I don't think they'll do it now, but you know, like when they go back to interview in retrospect or whatever, or for commentaries or anything like that. I do hope they address it and say like what either the motivation or, you know, the idea behind it was, what they wanted to get across.
Yeah,
because it's just
I do get that, you know, someone, particularly if they haven't mentioned it before, and I can't remember if Graham has brought it up with the Doctor before, but having that like severity of personal information being told can be very intimidating and. You know, I know I wouldn't know what to say. And I think that's what they were going for, is that she's actually a bit flawed. One, that Graham has been this ill before. And two, that he's being so personal with her. So she's just like, I actually don't know what to say, but I am here for you. But it doesn't quite get to that second point of, I have heard you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's how Graham responds. And that's for me is the problem, is that Graham does not take it well. He's just divulged something really, really quite important.
Yeah.
And he doesn't feel that the Doctor has even clocked that.
No. And
when we know that she can.
Yeah, and I hope if ever, you know, it does get talked about by those who wrote it or worked on it, they don't just pass it off as, oh, well, the Doctor's an alien, so, you know, she's going to react it. Because it's like, again, like you said, she's... This incarnation in particular, if you're narrowing it down to incarnations, like you said, in stories like the Witchfinders and stuff, has displayed that she is capable of interacting with humans on that level, or like a deeper level. So yeah, maybe we'll find out one day. Maybe we won't, but I'd be very curious for sure.
Yeah. I don't think the issue is that particular character trait, because obviously you can take being socially awkward, at least as they presented it, socially awkward in very different routes and ways. It's just more the consistency. That's just what it is. It just doesn't quite fit.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because I think it's a really heartfelt episode, particularly when that scene comes right after. I think Yaz's that flashback bit, and then when she goes to see that policewoman again to say, look, I became a police officer. Like I said I would, or you made me promise. So it just sort of, it's just like, it's such a what happened there?
Yeah, what's going on?
We're just moving on, and what was the question? I've forgotten.
I don't think we've answered it. It was just sort of like, you know, stories where the general consensus was either split or like leaning towards, we don't like this, but you're like, actually, I kind of like it, but. I
can't believe I haven't mentioned it, but Death to the Daleks, guys, come on. It's a classic.
The tile, the floor tile cliffhanger. It's the best in the show. There you go. I'm going to tweet random pics of Death of the Daleks at you every so often, just to hone in that point. But
please do. Please do.
And on that note, I think we'll start to wrap things up. So, I mean, Peter, again, thank you so much for coming on today. I don't know about you, I've had a blast talking about all
Yes, no, so have I. Thank you for having me on.
No, my pleasure. And as is customary on these sorts of podcasts, if you want to shout out your social medias or whatever work you're doing, please feel free to do so now.
Yeah. So who am I? Oh yeah. So obviously I have the YouTube channel, which is Dalekium, which I feel like most people probably know at this stage. But if you don't, there's that. I have the same handle on Twitter, where I do occasionally talk music, but most of the time it's just chatting shit mostly. But I also have the BandCamp. There's obviously BandCamp is like SoundCloud, but it's a bit better in my opinion. It's a bit nicer presentationally. And it's all linked together, by the way. So if you go on one, you'll probably find a link to the other. But I do have an original stuff page, which is www.petermiles.bandcamp.com. So any original stuff that I've done relatively recently or relatively not so recently will be on there. I also have a page for samples, which is dalekiumsamples.bandcamp.com. It's not music. Don't listen to it thinking you're going to get nice tunes. It's very much sound effects that I've created. I've made a facsimile of some of the sound effects from the original Derbyshire theme, things like that, things you could use in your project or you're making your own theme tune, or just as a sound effect, maybe something there could be used as like a laser gun, that kind of thing. That's where that page is. And I have Patreon as well. Hopefully, I don't really know what I'm doing for the rest of the year musically because everything's mad. But I am working on a few things, and that will be getting a bit more focus, hopefully relatively soon. And you can, if you really like what I'm doing, you can support me on there. There's lots of different tiers and levels with things you can get, including like samples, early access, stems. I put out the stems of the Doctor Who themes, at least the ones I have, because sadly I did lose a lot of them about 2017 in a really bad laptop data crash thing. But yeah, there's lots on there. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's a big rundown. But guys, that will be. I'll put like the websites. They'll have appeared on screen. Stuff will be in the description. There'll be cards. And as Peter said, go and follow him on Twitter. Subscribe to him on YouTube, because if you haven't gathered by this point, he makes some pretty damn good stuff. So you should definitely go and listen to it. And now I've got to remember who I am and where I am. So if you were watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching our two wonderful faces here. If you want to see more podcasts like this or just more Doctor Who content, please consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel. If you're listening on the audio, thank you so much for listening. You can find us on Spotify, Google, Apple, and all the rest that no one really knows the names to, but there's a list somewhere. Give us a follow on there for more podcasts each week. And again, Peter, thank you so much for coming on today.
And thank you for having me.
No worries. And for all of you listening/watching, I will see you next time.